is there a line to be drawn between myth and religion in terms of its usefulness in man's search for meaning?
So here's where Jordan and I are in much more, actually all three of us are in significant agreement. I said this in my series, but I want to say it again here. Myths aren't stories about things that happened in the deep past that are largely irrelevant. Myths are stories about perennial or pertinent patterns that need to be brought into awareness. And they need to be brought into an awareness not just or primarily at the propositional level, but at those non-propositional levels. And I think that is what good mythos does. I prefer to use the Greek word because we've now turned the English word into a synonym for a widely believed falsehood. And I don't think, again, if you go back even to the church fathers, I'm not a Christian, I'm not advocating for Christianity, right? But neither am I here to attack it, right? But when they talk about reading these stories, they think the literal interpretation is the weakest and the least important. You move to the allegorical or the symbolic, to the moral, to the spiritual, the mystical, and that's where, right? So they would say to you, but how is the story of Adam and Eve true for you now? And I don't mean true for you in that relativistic sense. I mean, how is it pointing to a pattern in your life right now?
So there is some sense in which the telling of this mythos becomes real in connecting to the patterns that kind of captivate the public today.
Sure. So
you just keep telling the story. I mean, there's something about some of these stories that are just really good at being sticky to the patterns of each generation.
Yes.
And they'll stick to different patterns throughout time. They're just sticky in powerful ways.
Yes. And so we keep returning back to them again and again and again. And it's important to see that some of these stories are recursive. They're myths about one particular set of patterns. They're myths about, right, not just the important pattern. Like you get the, Jordan stuff about there's heroes, and myths are trying to make us understand the need for being heroic in our own lives. One of the things I like to put in counterbalance to that is the Greek also have myths of hubris, right, that counterbalance the heroic, right? But then there are myths that are not about those deeply important patterns, but they're myths about religio itself, that the way religio means to bind, to connect, the way relevance realization connects us. And so the point of the myth is not notice that pattern or notice that pattern or notice that pattern. It's notice how all of these patterns are emerging and what does that say about us and reality. And those myths, I think, are genuinely profound.